The wealthy cowboy gave water to the Apache woman, and that evening she invited him to her home. The sun stood high over the desert, burning the land without mercy. Heat waves rose from the dry ground, and the air felt heavy as if it pressed down on everything that moved. The riverbed that once carried water now held only cracked mud and scattered stones. It had been dry for months, and everyone in the area knew it was a dangerous place to cross during the day. Still, people passed through when they had no choice. The cowboy rode slowly, guiding his horse with calm hands. He was known across the region as a wealthy man, someone who owned wide stretches of land and large herds of cattle, yet he did not dress to show his wealth. His clothes were plain, worn from years of work under the sun. He preferred it that way. Out here, fancy things meant little. What mattered was endurance, discipline, and knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. As he reached the middle of the dry riverbed, his horse suddenly slowed. The animal lowered its head and shifted its weight, uneasy. The cowboy followed the horse's gaze and noticed someone ahead, near a cluster of rocks that offered little shade. At first he thought it was a shadow or a trick of the light. Then he saw her clearly. An Apache woman sat on the ground, her back straight but her movements slow. Her face was calm, yet her lips were dry, and her breathing shallow. The heat had clearly taken its toll. A small clay pot rested beside her, empty. She did not wave or call out. She simply sat there, as if waiting for the sun itself to decide her fate. The cowboy reined in his horse and stayed still for a moment. He knew where he was. This land was close to Apache territory, a place where rules were not written, but deeply understood. Helping was not always welcome. Sometimes it was seen as an insult. Sometimes as a threat. He had passed people before and kept riding, telling himself it was safer for everyone that way. But this time, something held him in place. Doctor, he reached for the water flask tied to his saddle. It was half full, saved carefully for the long ride back. Water was valuable out here. More valuable than money. He hesitated, his fingers resting on the flask, his mind weighing risk against conscience. Finally, he dismounted. The sound of his boots on dry earth caught the woman's attention. She looked up slowly, her eyes sharp despite her condition. She did not move away, but her body tensed, ready. She had lived her whole life reading signs like these. A stranger approaching was never a small thing. The cowboy stopped several steps away, keeping his distance. He did not want to frighten her. He lifted the flask slightly so she could see it. "I have water," he said, his voice steady and low. "If you want it." Her eyes moved from his face to his horse, then to the brand marked on the saddle. She recognized it. Everyone did. It stood for power, land, and change that had come too fast and taken too much. For a long moment, only the wind spoke, brushing sand across the ground. Then she nodded once. He walked closer, slowly, and placed the flask on a rock between them. He stepped back again, giving her space. She reached for it carefully, as if it might disappear. When she drank, she did not rush. Each swallow was measured, controlled. She knew how dangerous it was to drink too quickly after thirst. The cowboy watched quietly. He felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. He had given water to many people before, workers, travelers, neighbors, but this felt different. This was not kindness returned with thanks. This was survival shared in silence. When she finished, she closed the flask and set it back on the rock. She met his eyes again. "You did not have to stop," she said. He nodded. "I know." He took it, surprised by the firmness of her grip despite the heat. There was strength in her, even now. For a moment it seemed like that would be the end of it. A simple exchange, soon forgotten. But neither moved. "My name is Tahoma," she said at last. He blinked, caught off guard by the offering of her name. "Ethan," he replied. He did not add his last name. Out here, it carried too much weight. She rose slowly to her feet, steadying herself on the rock. Though tired, she stood tall. She looked past him toward the open land, then back again. "This river used to run all year," she said quietly. "Before fences." Ethan followed her gaze. He had heard such words before, spoken in anger or sorrow. This time, they sounded like a simple truth, stated without blame. Boom. She gave a small, unreadable smile. Knowing is not the same as seeing. With that, she turned and began to walk away, her steps slow but determined. Ethan watched until she disappeared beyond the rocks. He mounted his horse again, but he did not ride off right away. The heat felt different now, heavier somehow. The land he had crossed so many times no longer looked empty. It felt watched, remembered. As he finally turned his horse toward home, he realized that the moment would not fade like the others. It had settled into him, quiet but firm, like a stone dropped into deep water. He did not yet know why, but he sensed that this was only the beginning. Ethan rode back toward his ranch as the sun slowly lowered in the sky, but his mind stayed behind at the dry riverbed. The sound of the woman's voice, calm and steady, repeated in his thoughts. He had met many people in his life, businessmen, workers, travelers, but none had left him feeling this unsettled. It was not guilt exactly. It was something deeper, like a quiet question he did not yet know how to answer. When he reached the ranch, the usual noises surrounded him. Cattle shifted in their pens, tools clinked as workers finished their tasks, and smoke rose gently from the kitchen house. Everything looked the same as it had every evening before, yet Ethan felt as if he were seeing it all through new eyes. One of his foremen greeted him and spoke about cattle prices and fence repairs. Ethan listened and nodded, responding when needed, but his attention drifted. He kept seeing the empty clay pot beside the woman, the way she accepted the water without gratitude or shame. It was as if she had reminded him of something he had forgotten long ago. That night, as he sat alone on the porch of his house, Ethan stared out at the wide land stretching before him. The stars appeared, one by one, bright and clear. He had always taken pride in this view. It was proof of what he had built through hard work and careful decisions. Yet now her words echoed again. This river used to run all year. He had known this, of course. Everyone did. Old maps showed the river full and strong. Elders spoke of seasons when water never failed, but knowing facts was easy. Feeling their weight was something else entirely. Across the land, not far from the ranch, Tahoma walked slowly toward her home. The heat of the day still lingered in her body, but the water had helped. With each step, strength returned little by little. Her home was modest, built with care and meaning rather than size. It stood among others like it, each one holding stories passed down through generations. As she approached, children ran past her, laughing softly, careful not to raise too much dust. An older woman noticed her and came forward, concern clear in her eyes. "You were gone long," the elder said. Toma nodded. The heat was strong today. The elder studied her face, then noticed the calm in her eyes. "You found water?" "Yes," Tahoma replied simply. She did not explain further, and the elder did not ask. In their world, silence often held more respect than questions. Later, as the evening meal was prepared, Tahoma sat quietly, her thoughts drifting back to the cowboy. She had seen men like him before, men with land, animals, and influence. Most passed by without seeing her at all. Some looked at her as if she were part of the land itself, something to move around or ignore, but this one had stopped. She wondered why. Not with suspicion, but with curiosity. He had not spoken much. He had not asked questions or made promises. He had simply offered water and waited. That mattered more than words. As the fire crackled and food was shared, Tahoma listened to the conversations around her. Talk of weather, of work, of small worries filled the air. Life continued, as it always did. Yet she felt something shifting, like the first sign of a changing season. Back at the ranch, Ethan retired to his study. Papers lay neatly arranged on the desk, records of land boundaries, trade agreements, supply orders. He had always believed that order brought peace. If things were clear and controlled, problems could be solved. That belief felt thinner now. He picked up an old journal he rarely opened. Inside were notes written years ago, reminders of why he had come west in the first place. He had been young then, determined to build something lasting. The land had seemed endless, waiting to be shaped. He paused, pen hovering above the page. For the first time, he wrote about someone he had met without naming her role or his own. He wrote about the heat, the empty riverbed, and the quiet exchange of water. As he wrote, he realized how small the moment had been and how large it felt inside him. The next morning came early. The sun rose, painting the land in soft gold before the heat returned. Ethan rode out again, checking fences and cattle, performing his usual duties, but his eyes searched the horizon more than usual. At one point, he passed near the riverbed again. He slowed his horse, scanning the area. It was empty now, silent except for the wind. The rocks stood where they had been, unchanged. Still, the place felt different, marked by memory. He dismounted and walked a short distance, kneeling to touch the dry ground. It crumbled easily between his fingers. He remembered the firmness of Tahoma's voice, the way she stood tall even when weak. "This land remembers," he murmured, surprising himself. At the same time, Tahoma spent the morning helping repair a roof damaged by wind. Her hands moved confidently, guided by experience. Others worked beside her, and the rhythm of shared effort brought comfort. Yet her thoughts wandered. She thought about the flask, the way Ethan had placed it down and stepped back. It was a small thing, but it showed understanding. He had not tried to control the moment. He had allowed her choice. Choice was rare, and because it was rare, it stayed with her. As the day went on, she found herself watching the paths that led out toward the ranch lands. She did not expect to see him again so soon, perhaps not at all. Still, the idea that paths could cross unexpectedly lingered in her mind. By afternoon, clouds gathered faintly in the distance, though no rain fell. The air felt charged, full of waiting. Ethan noticed it too as he rode back once more. He carried extra water this time, more than he usually would. He told himself it was practical. Deep down, he knew it was something else. Both of them, in different places and different worlds, felt the same quiet pull. It was not hope or fear, but awareness. The sense that a single act, done without noise or reward, had opened a door neither had planned to open. The sun was moving toward the edge of the sky when Ethan finished his work for the day. The heat was still strong, but the sharpness of it had softened. Long shadows stretched across the land, and the air carried a quiet stillness that usually meant evening was near. He wiped his hands, checked on the last of the cattle, and turned his horse toward the familiar trail home. But his horse slowed as it reached a fork in the path. Ethan had ridden this land for years, yet tonight his body seemed to remember something his mind had not planned. Without fully deciding to, he guided the horse toward the path that passed near the dry riverbed. He told himself it was just a shorter way back. Still, his heart beat a little faster as he approached the open stretch of land. The riverbed looked the same as before. Empty, cracked, quiet. The rocks stood where they always had. For a moment, he felt foolish for expecting anything else. He was about to turn away when he noticed a figure standing at the edge of the path. It was her. Tahoma stood calmly, as if she had been there for some time. The light of the setting sun rested on her shoulders, outlining her shape without making her seem small. She did not wave or step forward. She simply waited. Ethan brought his horse to a stop and dismounted. He did not smile or speak right away. Something told him this moment deserved patience. "I thought you might pass this way," she said. Her voice was steady, not surprised. It was as if this meeting was not chance but timing. "I often do," he replied. She nodded, then looked toward the horizon where the sky burned orange and gold. "The evening is kinder than the day," she said. "It allows people to breathe again." Ethan followed her gaze. "That's true." The wind moved gently across the dry ground, carrying the smell of dust and grass. Then Tahoma turned back to him.
"You gave me water yesterday," she said. "Not as a favor."
"Not to show yourself." He shrugged lightly. "It was the right thing." She studied him carefully, as if weighing something unseen. Then she spoke again. "This evening, I invite you to my home." The words settled between them, heavy and quiet. He knew what such an invitation meant. It was not common. It crossed lines that many believed should remain firm. People talked, even when they did not see clearly. Both sides would have questions. "You don't have to," he said honestly. "I know," she replied. "That is why I choose to." "Will it cause trouble?" She paused before answering. "Some will not understand."
"But understanding often comes after seeing."
He had spent his life choosing safe paths, measured choices, decisions that protected what he had built. This choice felt different. It did not promise gain. It offered only truth. "I will come," he said. Tahoma nodded once, as if she had expected nothing else. She turned and began to walk. Ethan followed, leading his horse by the reins. They did not speak much as they moved, but the silence felt shared, not empty. The path led away from the open land, into an area where the earth softened and plants grew closer together. The sky deepened in color, and the first stars appeared. As they walked, Ethan noticed small details, the way Tahoma stepped lightly, how she avoided loose stones without looking down. This land knew her, and she knew it in return. After some time, lights appeared ahead, warm and steady. A small group of homes rested together, shaped by care rather than speed. Smoke rose gently from one place, and the smell of food carried on the breeze. As they entered the area, people noticed them. Conversation softened, movements slowed. Eyes followed quietly. No one spoke directly to Ethan, but he felt their awareness like a weight. Thomas stopped near one of the homes and turned to him. "This is mine," she said. He tied his horse nearby, careful and respectful. When he turned back, she was already opening the door. Inside, the space was simple and clean. Objects filled the room, each placed with purpose. Nothing felt wasted or forgotten. A small fire burned gently, adding warmth to the cooling air. "Sit," she said, gesturing toward a place near the fire. He did, removing his hat and setting it beside him. For the first time since he arrived, he felt unsure of his place. Not unwelcome, but exposed. Tahoma moved quietly, preparing food without hurry. She did not speak as she worked, and Ethan did not interrupt. The silence felt different here, did not ask to be filled. She placed food before him and sat across the fire. They ate slowly. The flavors were unfamiliar but grounding. Ethan realized how rarely he ate without thinking of schedules or tasks. After a while, she spoke. "You carry much land," she said. "More than one person can walk in a lifetime. I worked for it." "I do not doubt that," she replied. "Work takes many forms. Your people worked this land long before fences." She did not argue, she only nodded. "My grandparents taught me where water would return first after dry seasons," she said. "They taught me which plants survive longest, which ones heal, which ones warn. I was taught how to measure land," he said quietly, "how to claim it on paper." She looked at him then, not with anger, but with curiosity. "And which lesson feels heavier?" The question surprised him. He took time before answering. "The one that cannot be erased," he said. A faint smile touched her lips. "Yes." The fire cracked softly. Outside, night settled fully, wrapping the land in calm. Ethan felt a strange mix of comfort and unease. He was a guest in a place shaped by memory deeper than his own. When he finally stood to leave, Tahoma rose as well. She did not offer thanks, and he did not expect any. "You may walk this path again," she said. "Whether you return here is your choice. I will not forget tonight." She met his gaze. "Nor will I." As he mounted his horse and turned toward home, he knew something within him had shifted. Not loudly, not suddenly, but firmly. The land felt different now. Not owned, not empty, but shared, with stories he had only just begun to hear. Ethan did not sleep much that night. After returning to his ranch, he lay awake listening to the quiet sounds around him. The soft movement of the wind, the distant call of an animal, the slow settling of the house. These were sounds he had known all his life, sounds that usually brought comfort. Tonight, they felt different, as if they were asking him to listen more closely. His mind kept returning to Tahoma's home, not just the place itself, but the feeling inside it. There had been no luxury, no signs of wealth as he understood it, yet nothing felt lacking. Every object had meaning. Every movement had purpose. It unsettled him in a way he could not fully explain. When morning came, Ethan rose early as he always did. He washed, dressed, and stepped outside. The sky was pale, the air cool for a short while before the heat would return. He stood still for a moment, breathing deeply, as if grounding himself before the day began. Work awaited him. It always did. As he walked the land with his foreman, checking fences and cattle, he noticed how quickly decisions were made without thought. A fence would be moved, a path redirected, water drawn from one place to serve another. These actions had once felt natural, even necessary. Now, each choice echoed with a quiet question. Who else does this touch? One of the workers approached him later that morning. "There's talk about the lower grazing area," the man said. "Some say the soil's getting weaker." Ethan nodded. "We'll rest it for a while." The worker looked surprised but did not argue. Such decisions often came down to profit. Resting land meant waiting. Waiting meant loss, at least in the short term. But Ethan felt no regret. Across the land, Tahoma began her day much as she always had. She helped prepare food, spoke with elders, and listened more than she talked. Life moved in rhythms shaped by patience. Yet she, too, felt a change inside herself. She had invited a man from the other world into her home, not as an act of peace or protest, but as a test of truth. She had watched him closely, noting how he listened, how he waited. Many men spoke quickly, filling space with words. Ethan had not. That mattered. Some noticed the change in her. An elder woman sat beside her later that day, working with careful hands. "You opened your door," the elder said quietly. "Yes," Tahoma replied. The elder did not sound angry, only thoughtful. Doors change people. "On both sides." Tahoma nodded. "That is why they are feared." As the sun climbed higher, Ethan found himself riding toward the edge of his land again. He had not planned to. His body simply moved that way. This time he stopped well before the riverbed. He dismounted and stood still, looking across the dry stretch. He remembered the firmness of Tahoma's voice when she spoke of the river, not accusing, not pleading, simply stating what was. He knelt and pressed his palm to the ground. The earth was warm, alive beneath the surface despite its dryness. He realized then that for years he had seen land as something to manage, not something to listen to. Later that afternoon, he called a meeting. His managers gathered, expecting routine discussions of numbers and schedules. Instead, Ethan spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. "We will adjust water use near the riverbed," he said. "No new fences there."
No added pressure. There were murmurs.
Questions followed. "That land feeds our herds," one man said. "Pulling back will cost us." Ethan met his gaze. "Short-term loss prevents long-term damage." Some nodded.
Others did not. Ethan understood.
Change rarely came without resistance. Still, he felt steady in his choice. That evening, as shadows stretched once more, Tahoma walked alone near her home. Children played nearby, their laughter soft. She watched them, thinking of what they would inherit, not just land, but memory. She thought of Ethan again. She did not romanticize him. She knew the history between their worlds ran deep and painful. One meeting could not undo that. Yet she also knew that small shifts often began quietly, like water seeping back into dry ground. As night fell, Ethan sat at his desk again. Papers lay before him, but he pushed them aside. He took out his journal and wrote, not about numbers or plans, but about listening, about the weight of silence, about the difference between taking and receiving. He wrote about the fire in Tahoma's home, how it warmed without burning too bright. He wondered when his own life had become so loud with control that it left little room for understanding. Days passed. Ethan did not return to Tahoma's home, nor did she seek him out. Yet their lives moved closer in unseen ways. Water use shifted. Workers spoke differently. Paths once closed were left open. Some noticed. Rumors traveled as they always did. Some said the cowboy was changing. Others said he was weakening. Ethan heard it all and said nothing. Tahoma heard whispers, too. Questions about why she had invited him. She answered with silence, letting time speak. One afternoon, Ethan encountered an older Apache man near the edge of the land. The man did not greet him warmly or coldly. He simply nodded. "You walk lighter lately," the man said. "I'm trying to." The man studied him. Trying is the start. Listening is the work. Ethan nodded. "I'm learning." The man turned to leave, then paused. "Remember," he said, "land does not belong to people. People belong to the land." That night, as stars filled the sky once more, Ethan stood outside his home and looked out across the wide stretch he had once believed he fully understood. It no longer felt like something to conquer or control. It felt like a responsibility, one that required humility. And somewhere not far away, Tahoma looked at the same sky, sensing that a slow change was unfolding. Not a dramatic one, not a perfect one, but a real one. Both knew that what had begun with a simple offering of water was now becoming something larger, a quiet reshaping of how two lives, and perhaps two worlds, might learn to exist side by side. Time moved forward quietly the way it always did. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The land changed little on the surface, but beneath it, small shifts were taking place, slow, steady, and real. Ethan continued his work, but not in the same way as before. He paid closer attention now. When workers spoke, he listened fully instead of cutting them short. When decisions came up about land, water, or movement, he paused before answering. That pause became important. It allowed room for thought, for care. Some of his business partners noticed the change. A few questioned him openly. "You're being cautious," one said. "Too cautious." Ethan only replied, "I'm being responsible." Not everyone agreed, but Ethan no longer felt the need to defend himself. He had learned that not all understanding came quickly. Some things needed time to settle, like dust after a long ride. Tahoma also continued her life as before. She worked, helped others, and listened to the elders. But she, too, carried something new within her. It was not expectation nor hope for change from others. It was awareness. The knowledge that even firm lines could soften when approached with respect. She noticed small differences around her. Water paths that once seemed closed were left open. Land near the riverbed rested longer. Here arguments arose where tension once lived. Nothing was announced. No credit was claimed. Still, the changes were there. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan found himself near the riverbed again. He stopped and dismounted, standing quietly as he had learned to do. The ground was still dry, but signs of life had begun to return. Small plants pushed through cracks, stubborn and patient, and he smiled faintly. Footsteps approached behind him. He did not turn right away, but he knew who it was. "You walk here often," Tahoma said. "Yes," Ethan replied. "It helps me remember." She stepped beside him, both of them facing the open land. There was no awkwardness, no rush to speak. "The river will return," she said softly. "Not all at once, but it always does." "I believe that now," he said. They stood together as the sky deepened in color. This time their silence felt complete, not uncertain. "I won't pretend I can fix what was broken," Ethan said after a while. "Some things are too old, too deep. Fixing is not always the goal. Sometimes it is enough to stop causing harm." "I want to do better." She met his gaze. "Then continue as you are, quietly." No promises were made, none were needed. Years passed. The land slowly healed in places where it was allowed to rest. The river returned during certain seasons, not strong, but steady. Children grew, learning both old ways and new paths. Stories were told, not of a wealthy cowboy or an Apache woman, but of a time when listening began to matter again. Ethan grew older, his hair turning gray, his movements slower. He passed more responsibility to others, choosing carefully who would lead after him. He taught them not just how to manage land, but how to respect it. When asked why he made certain choices, he would simply say, "Because it's right." Tahoma became an elder herself. Younger ones came to her for guidance. She spoke little of the past, but when she did, she spoke of moments, small ones, that changed direction. One act, she would say, can open many paths. On one quiet evening, long after the heat of summer had passed, Ethan rode out one last time to the riverbed. He dismounted slowly and sat on a familiar rock. The water was shallow, but it flowed. He watched it move, feeling at peace. From a distance, Tahoma saw him there and stopped. She did not approach. She did not need to. Moments were complete without words. As the sun set, casting gold across the water, both understood the same truth. What began with water had become understanding. What began in silence had grown into respect, and what touched two lives had gently shaped many more.